Hi, I'm Christy Cox with Providence Home, and together with our friends at the Courage Center, we're bringing you the story of the Hooker family. 15-year-old Lana Hooker is a Lexington High School student who recently died of a fentanyl overdose. And now her parents, Ben and Brandy, are sounding the alarm.
When I'm all choked up and I can't find the words.
Wow. Lana is incredibly gifted, smart, a very avid book reader, had been on honor roll the majority of her life. She's a honors student, was taking college courses in middle school and high school. Spoke 3 languages, taught herself to play guitar. She taught herself to play piano, was playing Beethoven, writes music, incredible, just very gifted and talented.
I mean, she was just your typical teenage girl, right? The girl next door. I mean, struggling with certain things that all teenage girls go through, right? Is that age and that, high school environment isn't always easy, and she had struggles like everyone else, but she was just your typical sister, kid in class that, in a nice neighborhood in a small town in Lexington, South Carolina.
Before we get to sort of that day, did you guys, because I know it's so important to the Courage Center and to Providence Home that we talk about there's no zip codes, there's no bank accounts. This can happen to anyone, and I know that's very important to you guys. So before this happened, because she was only 15, were there signs where you had drugs become part of the equation in her struggle? Can you walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah. I think all people kind of imagine that everybody's going to experiment with things maybe in high school or get into a situation where they're approached and asked if they want to experiment. For Lana, that was something that from a very early age we had discussed with her, even in the 7th grade. People may come and ask you if you, and swore up and down, I won't try, I won't do. The last year, especially since the pandemic, a lot of isolation started happening, a lot of loss of friends, very close friends of hers. A lot of this age group relies heavily on Snapchat. They spend a lot of time on Instagram, kind of competing with each other for, likes. And so it's a kind of new age that we're not super familiar with. I'm not even sure that I know how to use it well. But there were definitely signs. She started withdrawing from like family events. Alana, we used to play board games. She would come to the pumpkin patch with us in October. These things she just started kind of not wanting to do. We found that she was getting in trouble for skipping school. Her grades were slipping.
Now, how old was she when this started happening?
This started happening around 9th grade when she started high school.
So about 14.
About midway through 9th grade.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was not ever. I never was worried about drug use. It was just more
depression.
that kind of mental health that
Yeah.
I think a lot of kids went through with the pandemic, and us included. And so it was just always. Lana was mature,
very
grown up for her age. We always used to tell her to slow down. Like I don't want you to grow up.
Like
right
she'd
now.
send me to my room, kind of grown
And
up.
so,
like she's 40.
We're pretty accepting that hey, kids are gonna do certain things, but it wasn't a problem, or we knew maybe she'd had a beer. We found out and we'd be like, listen, you're not of age and those type of things, but. It was never. I don't think I ever thought one time or was worried that there was any kind of consistent drug use or consistent anything besides her going through the typical kind of teenage girl mental health where you don't see her for a whole day, right? You're like she's up in her room on her phone doing whatever, and maybe she comes out for a snack when we go to bed, right? And so that's. There was concern around that, but it wasn't really around drugs or alcohol.
So no conversation about Lana. We're worried. We think you're taking.
There
drugs.
was with me.
Okay.
So the first few months before this all occurred, I actually reached out to a center. I had worked really closely with the school, the sheriffs there. She was skipping a lot. There was a lot of phone calls.
And this is your honor roll student who's
Yeah.
skipping.
Yeah, she's on.
Okay.
Yeah, she's on honors courses. I mean,
Right.
she's got like intense, like college level courses that she's over there, taking. And
So you guys know that something's wrong, but you're
Oh, yeah.
100%.
but so you're thinking, but it's mental health. It's this
100%.
Depression.
And like
Gotcha.
there was
Depression,
a
yeah.
weed like marijuana type thing, which nowadays it's
Yeah.
like, is that bad or is it bad? But it's just,
well, I mean, it's questionable. It's not like using hardcore drugs.
Right.
yeah,
But it didn't cross our mind like, that there's like an actual huge substance abuse problem, but that there is definitely a mental health problem where she needs
100%.
help. And that maybe she was at moments trying to medicate her mind, in a way, like so, or run away from problems. So those were becoming very obvious.
But I guess in the midst of the pandemic, it was kind of easy to sort of kind of almost soothe yourself with just, this
Yeah.
is just the worst time.
Oh,
and
during
this
that,
is-
she didn't come
this
down
is
for
how
months.
she's dealing, kind of.
Yeah.
Out of her room.
Well,
yeah.
we would talk to other families
It
about
was
that
terrible.
too during the pandemic. It was like, man, we feel like she's a recluse right now. And like literally, all day I would knock on the downstairs and say, hey, come down for breakfast. And she would be sleeping till whenever. And then at night she would come to dinner sometimes. We'd be like trying to get her out of the shell.
And we always ate dinner. So slowly these things were changing. Her personality and her interaction with her family was changing. And
So
I could see that.
Would you say it's over about a 6-month period? Can you
It
give
started
me-
during the pandemic, the depression. And then when she started her freshman year, they were coming out of that where they were taking still courses online and still in person.
Half
and it
and
was
half.
flexing. So then there was like a lot of, I guess, just open areas to take advantage, so those things began to happen. And then slowly it got worse. Then she just wasn't going to class.
So as much as you feel comfortable doing and are able to, can you take me back to that morning in March? Like, what were you doing? What was kind of set up the scene for what happened?
So we were having a normal Saturday morning. Lana generally sleeps in. She had asked on Friday night to go out like around 10:30 to see a friend. And I said, it's 10:30 and, no. And so, Mom, it's Friday, I'm going, so, when I tell her no, she would sneak out. So my immediate compromise is, if you're going, then I want you back by midnight. And so I wait up. I text her at 11:45 and I'm like, where are you? She says, I'm upstairs. Oh, okay. So the girls, we sleep in we all go to sleep. And in the morning, I was cleaning the kitchen, like this deep clean, mopping, crazy, cleaning the backsplash wall, all the stuff. Girls are on their hoverboards around the house, dogs running around, we're watching TV, music's on the patio, everything's fine. He asks me a few times if she'd come down yet, if I had seen her, talked to her. No, she's probably sleeping. Around 7, she has an antidepressant that she was on. So around 7, I give her medicine every night. So started looking for her, where is she? He knocked on the wall. There was no answer. So she has a loft area that's upstairs. It's kind of separate from the house. So we would generally clink on the wall and, she'd shuffle around and come. So there was no answer. So I'm I wonder, did she go out with Jenny again? That's weird. She usually tells me. She usually asks. Sometimes she'll just go. But generally she'll tell me she's leaving. So I start texting her. I start calling her. There's no answer. Then I start threatening her. If you don't call me back, if you don't answer me, I'm going to call the police. Because we had an episode the year before where she ran away one night with some boy, overnight, and we hadn't seen her. So that was definitely a concern, where'd she go? So he said, did you check upstairs? I said, no, I haven't been up there. So I go up and I've always had a weird feeling about those stairs. So it's a really uncomfortable feeling, because she's had some things mental health wise in the past where if she wasn't shuffling around when we knocked on the wall, the heart would jump, stomach drop. But so I started to go up the stairs, and I see her soft pillows, which are these little fluffy pillows that she's had since she was a baby, on the corner of one of the recliner chairs. And so a little bit of comfort comes on me, and the Netflix square popping around the TV, and I approach, and she's just there Indian style with her head on the floor. So my first thought is, shit, is she drunk? Like what the heck? So I nudge, and she doesn't move, and she looks super flat. So it was strange. So the girls are on the couch downstairs watching a movie, cuddled up. It's like 8 something, 9 o'clock at this point. So I go and I run downstairs, and I get him. He can see panic, and he looks at me and face drop, and we're not trying not to scream or get like crazy. The kids are right there. We go up the stairs, and he nudges her, and she doesn't move, and he nudges her harder, and she falls over. Her legs are black. And he said, she's dead. I scream. The kids still to this day were like, is there a mouse upstairs? Like they didn't understand. Like we run downstairs and take them next door. The police, were called, and the area roped off, and we stayed there for 4.5 hours until when the medics came. The only thing I could say is, why aren't you helping her? There's nothing we can do.
What was your assumption at that time? Did you think that she had taken something? Or you
Good
just
Lord,
had
I
no
don't
idea?
know.
I think the first assumption was,
I don't know.
First,
Gosh.
the question was, because I picked her up and I held her and immediately kind of knew. It was just like, was it, you go through everything, right? Suicide, like different things. But then I see a half-eaten donut right beside it, her in a drink bottle that was open, that she was eating the donut when it happened, right? So we just didn't really know, but obviously...
Her phone's plugged in, the TV.
Yeah,
on,
so everything just
know.
looks normal, and at that point, we have no clue, right?
Yeah.
We're just like, what?
And she's sitting up. She
was Indian style, like her head was down, but she's holding a drink in her hand. There's a donut here, her soft pillow here, her phone's plugged in, sitting right there. She's watching TV. I got, I don't know.
So eventually the coroner then rules that it's fentanyl.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100% fentanyl.
The pill was 3 nanograms can kill something. That's a tiny
It's like
amount.
grains of salt.
Smaller than grains of salt. Mm-hmm. And she had 23 nanograms in her system. So
there's not enough Narcan in Lexington.
Unless you get there within 5. He was like, the coroner told us if
we'd sat we were
next to her,
maybe.
and we got something to her within 5 to 10 minutes.
But you'd have to keep administering. We've learned a lot about this now after researching it. The things that I've tried to read just to understand what she must have felt as it was, those are the things that as a mom run through, what happened to her.
As much as you can you share, like, what do you think happened? Because I know that you guys...
Yeah.
She didn't say, I'm taking fentanyl tonight.
No, the coroner walked us through it.
Well, so here's what happened. I immediately started contacting people in the neighborhood, because there's a lot of cameras in the neighborhood, about, hey, can you look on your camera to see, like, if Lana is going back? And I have the videos to this day. She snuck out, and I have a timeline of her walking up the street to meet someone, walking back, and I had this gentleman he sent me videos from the whole night, all the way.
Our neighbor,
at 4:29 in the morning, we see her walking back
movement
to the house, out of someone's car. The car pulls
Hanging
out
out
of the
with someone,
neighborhood, and so we had the timeline pretty. knocked down to she entered back into the house around 4:30. got a donut that was out of the kitchen, went upstairs, plugged her phone in, tried to turn on the TV, and with according to the coroner, he put the kind of report as 4:45 to 4:50 a.m.
And you guys, did I get that right? That you think she thought that someone gave her something for an anxiety?
Well, they have her phone. You know, your phone.
There's
tells
a criminal
everything.
Investigation going on.
So yeah, there's
still
there's an open investigation, but there is they've got her phone. They have traces of all of it. They saw text messages. She purchased a $3 Percocet.
There's a Cash App transaction for $3.
Yeah, so they could see it.
And then that Percocet ended up being straight fentanyl.
Honestly, the $3 is what kills me. I mean, that is
stupid.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you just think, I mean, so people medicate themselves all the time, and it's like, in her mind, what's the harm in, taking a little Percocet?
Well, I mean, opiates make you happy. They make you feel mellow, calm. I mean,
it's not the right thing, but I've seen a lot worse than that from people wanting to do a Percocet, and it's just hard to believe that one little transaction is what
the kicker
lights
is that
out.
She wasn't a user, so like this is fairly new.
Yeah.
So they could tell from her messages
that she had done it, purchased a couple before.
She had tried it before, but wasn't
was like
maybe this is a second, third time, kind of.
And when you say tried, she tried Percocet.
Yeah.
She tried Percocet,
okay,
yeah,
and then this bitch
got through it.
So ultimately, what the investigation around is that someone's pressing pills with just fentanyl in it because they can't get access to the Percocets because doctors aren't prescribing Percocets anymore. And these kids, and they're passing around these kids at the high school, and it's kind of a modern day, like pretty common thing at the high school is, popping a Percocet. And so just, obviously it was the wrong decision. I don't want any of my daughters popping anything. We have 2 other daughters. But it's hard to believe that one decision, is what ended her life, and I think that's what's really hard for us to swallow. It's like, why her? Why that moment? Like, why wouldn't it be a different moment when we were around at not at 4:30 in the morning, we're all passed out asleep? It's just hard to kind of say because how many other people have done that same thing and not died? But I know there's been a lot of people who have died from it, but it's just. The whole thing is just, as a parent, it's hard
for us
to process.
Period, that she's not here and that she's not coming back.
And how it happened.
All of it. We're all having a really hard time processing it.
It just seems impossible. The whole thing is just...
And it's abrupt too, I mean, not that deaths when someone is sick and they are going to, but the abruptness of it is just so surreal as well. And it's just a lot.
Well, I mean, the whole thing too is, I wouldn't wish it on anyone to find your dead anyone, right?
This is why we've tried to be transparent.
And it's just, they're our therapist, and we're all going to therapy, even our daughters, is they're saying it's like PTSD for her and I around it too, because like, it's just not, that's not.
I mean, yeah, I didn't sleep for months.
It's not common to find your dead child. Let's just say that.
Afraid of the dark for weeks. Like, it was a lot. So we've been through a lot.
The reason you're being so transparent and putting yourself out that is because you want to prevent another parent.
I don't want this to happen to anyone.
So what's your message to parents? What kind of conversations do you want them to have with their kids? How old should those conversations start? At what age?
I mean, at the end of the day, we can't make those choices for our kids. They're going to make those choices. Lana made a bad choice. We can't control the people they hang around with. We can hope that they, choose the right groups and the right connections. My hope is that, a lot of parents give a lot of leeway and allow their kids to go places. And, and that's part of growing up. You need to make mistakes in order to learn and grow. I mean, but in this level of like play field, these are dangerous times where those mistakes can lead to, it's over.
So let me put it in another way then. So what's the conversation as your babies get older? When do you start talking to them about it, and what do you say to them?
Yeah. So I think it's around, that middle school age, it's education around, when we were younger, like everyone was worried about ODs of mixture of things. But nowadays, you don't know. Fentanyl's in weed. It's in, cocaine. It's in Percocets. It's in
it comes
any
in
kind of
liquid
tablet,
forms, too.
liquid form.
Could be in drinks,
so anything,
alcohol.
I think the education around it is like, these kids just, and I think about in high school, I was invincible, drank, did stuff I probably shouldn't have done, but it wasn't anything like, fentanyl wasn't around to kind of just kill me in one little dose, right? So it's an awareness. I'm not the guy, I'm different than her. I'm not the guy to tell anyone not to do anything and not to kind of live, but being aware that, someone hands you a pill at a party, or, we went and spoke to the high school the day before prom, and just said, listen, like, they're going to be smelling for alcohol at the prom. The next thing y'all probably think is, let me pop a pill. Let me tell you what happened when my daughter popped a pill, right? And it's just education that, that's one little pill, lights out.
And I hope...
And there's nothing you can reverse from that.
The school does a real good job of discussing, but the majority of, I guess, the support that the school provides is not to use drugs. I think it's important also that the community know that if their children are using drugs, or that if they know someone who is, that they have resources. So the resources is like the biggest thing. As a parent too, I would frequently turn to the school, like, so what do I do? She's skipping, so tell me what to do now. Give me a blueprint of what's next. Show me exactly the steps. And there was no answer. There was no step to take next. It was, she got in school suspension and, different things, but there needs to be those resources, and they need to be readily available, and kids need to know where to go if their friend has a problem, if their parent has a problem, if their aunt has a problem. They need to know who to speak to, and they need to know that Narcan's there, that these should be in everybody's house, that it should be there just like a thermometer, that could save someone's life. In some cases, it may not be strong enough, but the fact is that it's there and you can try. And the 911 Good Samaritan law, I think that's a huge thing. If you're with somebody, not leaving them, making that call to save their life can protect you and them. So it's a very important it's important that information is shared, and I think the schools and all the resources around should be very readily clear.
So do you feel that right now, if a parent's going through the same thing that you guys went through and they notice their child is withdrawn, do you feel like there is a resource now that they can call?
I do not.
Okay.
But I have worked with Dr. Poole, and we have discussed like our concerns with those resources being available. And the school, I believe, has gotten together as a team to begin to build that blueprint, so that they can say there are resources in our community. Luray DAC does assessments. You can go to the Courage Center, which is a fantastic resource that has teen youth groups and substance abuse counseling. And they'll place you with counselors that are really close in the same age or the same scenarios as your children or your mother, father, aunt, uncle. So those resources we weren't necessarily aware of. Touch and go, we knew they were there, but we didn't know how to act, how to move forward immediately to get those steps. So I think making those available is important.
Yeah, I would my kind of thought around all of this is, we wish people would have stepped in, with some of the different things for mental health, right? And as a parent, we knew she was struggling with certain things, right? But you never think that means she's going to die. Your child's going to die. You're like, okay, they're going to get through it, right?
Yeah,
like they're going to struggle. And then, whenever they're in college or through that, they're going to be all back. They just experimented, and she was having troubles here. But unfortunately for us, ours didn't, right? So just for my kind of message to parents is awareness of that kind of, this mental health decline with social media.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of studies being done around that. And the ease of being able to actually access these type of things. So having those conversations with your children around, hey, I understand this, but here's the deal. Fentanyl doesn't discriminate on your race, your population, little town in Lexington versus big city, Chicago, LA. anyone anywhere can do it. Like when we talked to the high school here, they're like, most kids were like, I never would have thought this would happen in Lexington, South Carolina at Lexington High School. It did.
Had you guys ever heard of fentanyl before this
I
happened?
knew, I was aware of it.
They were talking about it on TV. I didn't know it was
But
going to touch my
no
home.
one actually understood
No.
I don't think we ever like really fully understood the severity. I was like, it's almost like a myth. Like from when you hear about it, you're like, okay, that's cool. That's LA druggies who are doing heroin and they get some fentanyl mixed in it. It's not.
I mean, it's similar
everywhere.
to, there's a hurricane that wipes out an entire community. You still feel that impact, but it didn't happen directly to you. So, I think when this happened in the community and these students, they had an opportunity also to feel it hit home.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, people just have to realize they're dealing with an absolute monster here.
It is. Well, look, and it's a pandemic.
It's
here.
not just
If you-
Lana though. So there's other kids in this area that have had issues. That night, I mean, there were 6 overdoses. There were people in ICU. One of them was in 8th grade. It's not just in the high schools. I don't know why people are passing drugs to our kids, but it's getting younger and younger.
So those conversations have to start younger and
Yes.
younger.
The middle school is I mean, obviously every parent needs to figure out the best time depending on the maturity of your children, right?
Yeah.
But I don't want to be having that conversation with my 8-year-old right now.
Exactly.
But there's a time and a place where you think we're having a hard time processing this. How does an 8-year-old process the fact that someone who's been around her whole life is now gone forever, and that she can't ever see her again? And it was, it's hard for us. I mean, I can't imagine as, the person who birthed her, how Brandy feels. But my heart breaks for my kids, that they don't have their sister there. And, they're trying to understand all that as well. So it's just one of those things where it's like, you don't think that could happen. It did. And we deal with the consequences of this every day of our life, and our kids are too. So it's in the community is in the high school. These kids are trying to process that this has happened as well.
Can I ask you guys what you tell your 2 little ones about Lana?
So it took us a moment to figure out how to couch this with them. They're young. So we were told by professionals to be honest. Obviously, we didn't tell them, all the specifics, but that she wasn't coming back, that, she was gone and that she's in heaven. And they still struggle really, like Charlie last night, just out of nowhere, she's eating goldfish and she just starts crying. She's 4. So they're having a hard time processing the permanency of this. And I'm a fixer. I like to fix things, and it's been very hard for me to process this can't be fixed. So having those conversations with little ones, obviously their therapists are helping them work through a lot of that too, which is probably a good place for those conversations to take place.
Yeah. Let's wrap it up where we began then. So what do you want people who are watching this to know about your girl? What do you want them to remember her? What do you want her legacy to be?
Lana's pure magic. I miss her so much. She's a wonderful kid. It's just this. It's not fair. This isn't. She had a lot forward, a lot to do, a lot graduation and marriage and kids and a life. She wanted to be a doctor, an anesthesiologist. She wanted to go places.
And it robs you both of all those memories, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Us and our extended, we got a huge family here. I mean, it's robbed plenty. It's definitely a dark thing that's out there. And like I said, I mean, it's hitting our generations younger and younger. I mean, kids are drinking in elementary school, so those are things that I was not thinking about in elementary school. So things are changing.